Welcome. So here it is, the 8th audio in this series designed to support the content and materials in the Elizabeth McSweeney Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery series. There's a link to all 5 ebooks available on Amazon below. This is the one you've been waiting for. We're moving on to book 5 or volume 5 of the Road to Recovery series. This is the one where we talk about the 7 healing principles and support you to plan a framework in your healing journey towards recovery. I wrote this book 10 years ago, the series of these books rather, 10 years ago. Before that, I was ill for 12 years. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia for 7, and I was so disabled by the condition that I had a blue badge here in the UK. That's a disabled person's transport badge, for those of you who don't know. And I received disability living allowance and personal support allowance. 10 years ago, I was 44 years old, and now, a decade later, I've been medication-free, symptom-free, and fibro-free for 10 years. So in the 5 ebook series, Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery, I share my journey through the illness and the medical research that helped me to find my keys to reversing the fibromyalgia condition right down on a cellular level. And in this audio, I'm going to talk about the first of the 7 healing principles. In other words, there will be 7 audio support recordings for part 1 of ebook 5. Actually, no, there will be 6 because I'm going to talk about 2 of them today. Part 2 of the ebook 5 is the recovery framework, or the strict, very strict protocols that I used as a daily regime in order to recover. And I think that you need to be strict to bring the body back into healing. Okay, you can't just say, oh, I need a bit of that or a bit of this. It's like totally focused on nothing but healing until you recover. Now, I'm not saying that my framework is a cure or that it's the only path to recovery, but I am saying that I'm sharing with you my story and my journey and how I recovered from fibromyalgia, in the hope that it will help you too. It has helped other people. This audio is quite long again, so do stop and start it whenever you need. Come back, revisit me, okay? And as usual, I'm going to start this session with gratitudes. First, as always, I'm so glad that you have found me. Thank you, because it signals as much to you as it does to me that you have reached a point in your illness where you are sincerely yearning to recover. And I sincerely thank you for reaching this point. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my son again, who's now 23, but 10 years ago, and for the 7 years before that, really, for all of his childhood. When he was a child, he became my carer because I was disabled with fibromyalgia. And obviously, he lived through some of the traumas too, and he then had it as he was older, but I think he's okay now. I kind of hope he is. I'd also like to thank my 2 very best friends, Talitha Tallett and Jay Wilson. I recovered from fibromyalgia a decade ago. I've been a bit silent about it because, to be honest, for many years I just felt ashamed of being so destroyed by the pain of this illness that I really didn't want to shout about it from the rooftops. And, to be honest, I was scared that I would just relapse and I hadn't really recovered. Now, I lost 7 years of my life or more to the condition, and I just didn't really want to think about it as well. So, but now I'm feeling much more confident after 10 years, and I'm feeling confident enough to reach out and help other people just like you. And this year is 2020, I've kind of got into 2020 vision mode, and I'm determined to turn my karma, or the experience of fibromyalgia, into my mission and support you in your healing and recovery. So kind of baby steps. The first bit of that is getting these audios out, looking at setting up a website to produce some of the maybe health and nutritional supplements that I used, but more importantly than that, I really want to dedicate, or I will be dedicating this year to looking into the role that medical cannabis could help you, because it seems to be a plant just made fit for the purpose. I mean, it has 130 cannabinoids. It has they can help with pain on every level. They can help with inflammation on every level. They can help with sleeping on every level. So, we don't know exactly how, and that's what I want to, do some more. I won't say pioneering research, because the research coming out of Israel is absolutely phenomenal. And I know there are other groups and other pharmaceutical growers in the UK, for example, that are looking into these researches. I want to focus on helping people with fibromyalgia. Obviously, we'll be looking for investors for this. So, all in good time. Right now, back in the room, we're going to look at book 5 of the Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery series and the 7 healing principles. So, writing the 5 books. For me, it was cathartic and elucidating as I discovered medical research papers covering a wide range of subjects, from diagnosis, blood, oxygen levels, changes in muscle fibres and mitochondria, the relationship between sleep disturbances, the roles of trauma and fight or flight in the fibromyalgia condition, and the importance of alkaline diets and exercise in the path to recovery. Now, my recovery didn't happen overnight, and it was just as much a spiritual one as it was a physical one. I began writing these books through research, and research enabled me to understand the condition, and research helped me to understand the 7 healing principles. Now, I'm going to record a different series about the more spiritual or esoteric aspects of fibromyalgia, along with some specific audios to help you. But today we're going to focus on the first of the 7 healing principles, or keys to recovery. 4 of those keys, nothing secret about them, I've shared with you in previous audio support materials. And the first key to recovery, or the first healing principle, is overcoming past trauma. Now, when I was researching information for these ebooks, the Fibromyalgia Association UK was kind enough to disseminate a questionnaire that I'd devised, and without exception, everyone who responded, everyone who wrote to me, wrote about multiple traumas that had triggered their fibromyalgia condition, or ongoing traumas, I should say. And this led me to believe that rather than being stress-related per se, fibromyalgia is trauma-related. So, recovering from fibromyalgia therefore has to be a holistic approach, covering body, mind and spirit. Now, trauma is physical and emotional, and without exception, every person who wrote to me had experienced several consecutive traumas, physical, emotional, spiritual, from which they had been unable to heal properly, or long-term traumas, and I think I know why. Now, there have been many medical research papers linking fibromyalgia to trauma, so head injuries, rape, industrial or road traffic accidents. But the people who wrote to me had also suffered grief, maybe domestic violence or childhood abuse, or had survived other kinds of grief, the loss of loved ones, or traumatic industrial tribunals, for example. And this led me to realise that fibromyalgia is not so much an illness per se, but in itself a deep healing process. Your body is crying out for healing. So, the first key to recovery is overcoming trauma. Now, I wouldn't really advise going straight to ebook 5 or ebook volume 5 in this series without reading the comprehensive explanations in books 1 to 4 that kind of support it and explain it, because healing is a journey, and if it was that easy to jump straight into it, fibromyalgia really wouldn't be such a cruel, painful, chronic, life-destroying condition. Fibromyalgia for me was like a dark veil or a prison sentence, and yet it was like a life sentence, really. I think I've said before that I got so depressed that I tried to take my own life. I just did not want to be in that much pain. So I'm very eternally grateful that I failed to take my own life, but it made me realise I don't want to be in pain for the rest of my life. So therefore, if I'm not going to die now, I must recover. And I will say that once I recovered from fibromyalgia, and now I look back, crossing over from the illness to recovery was elusive. But looking back, it was just like a chalk line that I'd just stepped over, and yet at the time it seemed like an impossible prison. The healing process of recovery from trauma follows a similar path to that of grieving. In response to grieving, we navigate through 7 often uncharted stepping stones. They are shock, denial, anger, guilt, a bargaining, mourning, and finally acceptance. Now, I was so lucky because once I'd made the determination to recover and really believed I could, then the universe presented many forms of support. One of these was that my doctor, Dr. Douglas from Bridgewater, since retired, invited me to participate, along with other people with fibromyalgia, to this 7 stepping stones approach based on the work of Dr. Trevor Griffiths, who explained the process in his book Lost and Then Found. Correlations between physical and emotional traumas and fibromyalgia are now well documented, and it's my belief that fibromyalgia is not caused by experiencing any one severe life-changing stressor, for example divorce, redundancy, bereavement, or any one physical trauma, but a series of events that have led a body to become physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, and energetically or spiritually stuck on a stepping stone loop. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a little more detail. This inability to heal is often categorized by medical professions as somatic, making fibromyalgia a somatic illness, or even in worst case scenarios a psychosomatic illness. It's not. Fibromyalgia is your body crying out to be healed. If you are suffering from fibromyalgia, this doesn't mean you're a victim of circumstance. It means that you are grieving. Spiritual healers talk about chakras and subtle electromagnetic bioenergy fields. Traumatic and stressful events leave a bioenergetic memory, an accumulation of old, unprocessed emotional pain. Now, this comes from the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, who referred to this or described this as the pain body, which can become re-triggered and compounded by any new physical or emotional stress whenever your hypersensitive central nervous system becomes overstimulated. So I would hugely recommend looking up the work of Eckhart Tolle and reading about the pain body. And if you have a resonance with that, then you will have a resonance with what I'm saying. And hopefully you will then have a resonance and, and a hope or a belief in this path towards recovery. Our bodies are alive with energy. Our chakras are energy vortexes which connect our life with all the life around us. When we're hurt, the vortexes close down in order to protect us. After a period of grieving and natural healing process, they kind of reopen so that energy can flow healthily again. Multiple traumas can rip or damage these chakras, and re-triggering of traumatic memories of being stuck on or looping between grieving stepping stones can stagnate our energy, exhausting us in body and mind. So the first tenet of my Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery program, which in the 5th ebook I've put as a 3-day program. Now, you can't recover in 3 days, but first of all, I didn't want to write a program that was 365 days long, but you need to be really strict and follow the protocol. I would suggest 5 days, 1 week, then I would suggest 30 days. Now, once you do something very strictly for 30 days, it becomes habit and it will lead to recovery. So the first tenet is that you don't think of yourself as a victim of these traumatic events, but respect the fact that you are grieving, and grieving is an innate healing process. So this pain is part of grieving, and grieving is an innate healing process. So what do we mean when we say physical trauma? And a series of traumatic events, including psychological, emotional, or even psychic, mental traumas. What do we mean when we say that these physical traumas, emotional, mental, whatever, have led your body to becoming energetically stuck in those stepping stone loops? Sorry, that really wasn't very articulate. Let me say that. Let me ask that question again. So, what do we mean when we say that this series of traumatic events, and that can be physical, emotional, and psychological events, can lead your body to become stuck on the stepping stone loop, and it can be your any part of that process. Of healing. So the 7 stepping stones approach to hidden losses, which was first identified by Dr. Griffiths, also explains how there are unrecognised losses within each loss or trauma. So let me explain that. For example, say you lose your mobile phone. You've lost your mobile phone, right? But the hidden losses include the cost of replacing it, money, images that may have been stored on it, personal addresses, personal photos, not in the cloud. You might have lost a sense of security because you might be driving alone, in the dark or travelling, and, you feel disconnected. You will lose time in having to replace it and buy a new one, etc. So that's at least 5, isn't it, hidden losses within that one loss. So for every loss and every trauma that's happened to you, there are hidden losses. And we go through the process, that same process of grieving, the same 7 stepping stones of grieving for every hidden loss as well as every loss. So the first stepping stone is shock. Oh, it can't have happened. The second is disbelief, denial. It must be here somewhere. The third is anger. Now, anger is always rooted in pain and fear. So when you feel angry, that is rooted in pain and fear. And the 4th stepping stone is guilt. I shouldn't have left it there. It was my fault. Now I won't be able to contact my friends. The 5th stepping stone of grieving or overcoming trauma is bargaining, where we bargain away the loss. We try to rationalise it with ourselves and we try to come to terms with it. And there will be sorrow, and then there will be acceptance. So if we are hit by multiple losses or traumas in a row, whether they are physical, a head injury, or mental, I've lost, I don't mean as in mental illness. I mean, I've lost my job, so it's affecting me mentally, or emotional. My dog has died. Those losses within those losses are hidden losses, or a whole stream of hidden losses. So sometimes we think, for example, that we have grieved and overcome trauma or a loss, but in fact the hidden losses beneath, inside, are holding us stuck in a loop. And we can get stuck in the loop on the stepping stones. Mine was anger, and anger would turn to depression. I was depressed, I was repressed, I was aggressive. I would flip, I would be grieving, I would be sad, then I would be angry. I didn't think I did anger because I'm a Buddhist. I used to say, I'm not angry, I'm really chilled out. I don't do anger, I'm a Buddhist. But actually, I was angry. Inside, I was repressing my anger. And repressing my anger was like pushing it down inside, like pushing it in a pressure cooker and letting it turn into pain. And that was exhausting my body on a cellular level. So repressing that anger became toxic to me on a cellular level. Now, only you know what triggered your fibromyalgia, what events, and only you know what traumas need healing. But I can say, now is the time to love yourself. Now is the time to forgive yourself, and also to forgive those who trespassed against you. I was lucky enough to receive the treatment EMDR as a healing treatment for post-traumatic stress during my recovery from fibromyalgia. please look for a specialist counsellor trained in EMDR. It is a healing process for post-traumatic stress. If you'd like us to signpost you in the direction of recommended qualified specialist EMDR trauma therapists, or if you are yourself an EMDR trained trauma therapist listening to this, please get in touch now using the links below. We want to set up a really good nationwide or global referral system. While I talk you through a protocol called FFT, I want you to close your eyes and let everything go silent and go into that warmth darkness, that warmth like it's dark and it's warm inside like the womb. FFT is another useful tool to support your recovery from trauma. Now, this one can also eradicate localized and chronic pain. So EMDR, brilliant for post-traumatic stress. The FFT protocol, that you will find it's written down as the fourth healing principle in the fifth volume of the Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery series, is actually in the appendix, the FFT protocol. It's a useful tool to support your recovery from trauma, and it can also help eradicate localized and chronic pains. It's a body tapping or body rubbing technique based on EFT. You can look that tapping technique up on the internet. That's EFT. And it's all based on the Touch for Health kinesiology techniques that are even older. So the FFT technique is a hybrid, especially for fibromyalgia, whereas EFT is short for Emotional Freedom Technique. This tapping method is called FFT, Fibromyalgia Freedom Technique. And it's based on the premise that all negative emotion is a disruption in the body's energy system, and the acceptance that emotional traumas contribute to physical disease. And that's the same principle that EFT, or Emotional Freedom Technique, is based on. And EFT draws on experience from the healing fields of affirmations, cognitive behavioural therapy, kinesiology, and acupressure. It involves a simple basic recipe of affirmations and body tapping points, simultaneous body tapping. Now, it was first described in the EFT manual, so the points you're tapping are shiatsu points or acupressure points. And it was first described in the EFT manual by the founder of the EFT Foundation, Gary Craig. Now, I came across EFT, it's quite an old technique, when I was searching for a hypnotherapist, because I wondered if hypnotherapy could help to turn down the volume of my pain. My pain was just so soul-destroying and excruciating. I just wanted to turn its volume down. Now, I couldn't find a hypnotherapist, but I did find the EFT protocol, and I was sitting at my desk and my neck hurt and my lower back was in pain and the back of my thigh muscles hurt, and I read the EFT protocol, which I must admit sounded a bit bonkers at first, but because I was a kinesiologist previously and I had a resonance immediately with the healing principles behind, so nothing ventured, nothing gained. I tried it. I must admit I didn't expect it to work. I focused on each specific pain and used the techniques until each specific pain went away. Now, even pain-free, I was sceptical, and I remember at this point I was too scared to even go out without a large handbag full of prescribed painkillers, medications, including gabapentin, naproxen, ibuprofen, paracetamol and morphine. So when the EFT protocol eradicated my pain, I firmly believed that the pain would return at least within 20 minutes. 5 days later, when I had stopped taking all my medication, suddenly I had morphine and drug withdrawals, and whoa, my pain came back. Just like slapped me in the face, and I was shivering and I was sweating and I was vomiting. And my poor son, who I think then was maybe 10 years old or 11 years old, oh my God. So at first he'd really encouraged me to stop taking my medication and get better, and then he was scared and he was saying, "Oh, Mum, please, please take your medication." And I was really, really lucky because I had the most fantastic homeopath, Josephine Smolden, in my village, Chedsey in Somerset, and she came round and then she treated me, and then over a period of weeks and months she treated me, and I could not have recovered without my homeopath. So thank you, Josephine. Now, I don't recommend you suddenly stop medication like I did, but I do recommend this. I do recommend the Fibromyalgia Freedom Technique. Now, it's not something I can talk you through without visual diagrams, so for now I'm just going to recommend you download book 5 or volume 5 of the series to see the diagrams, and the FFT, that's the Fibromyalgia Freedom Techniques, they're in the appendix. Now I promise you I'll attach them to a website, just bear with me. They might be available as soon as they're available. We'll pop down underneath the video this audio that they are available. So have a look there first, obviously. I also promise you that I will make a whole video including real people and diagrams leading you through this technique and showing you how it works. And if anyone would like to volunteer to help me with that, to either film or be the person that I'm practicing on or teaching, then that would be great. Now, one of the reasons I really love the Fibromyalgia Freedom Technique, FFT, is because it's something you can do to yourself on a daily basis. So unlike EMDR, where you need a qualified professional counsellor or therapist, this is something that you can do for yourself. And doing things for yourself, I think, is a huge, huge, huge step towards recovery. So I promise you I will make a whole video about this. And if you do want to volunteer, yeah, just get in contact. In earlier audios supporting the Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery ebooks, we've talked about what fibromyalgia is, what it isn't, paths to diagnosis, prognosis, NHS treatment protocols here in the UK, the role of family and friends both in your recovery and in certain extents in your illness. Fibromyalgia is like a whole of life paralysis or petrification. So it's like Lot in the Bible, biblical Lot, looking back and turning to a pillar of salt. Trauma and grief has held you lost, looping on those stepping stones. So while you're digesting all of that information and thinking about that, I'm going to thank you for joining me today. Maybe have a think about which stepping stones you're stuck on. Is there the shock? Are you still in shock? Maybe when you feel a change in temperature and it hurts, maybe you're still in shock. Maybe you're in denial of the trauma. I don't mean of the fibromyalgia, I mean of the trauma that's triggered the fibromyalgia. Maybe you're feeling angry. Maybe there's repressed anger. So whatever it is, whichever stepping stone you're lost on, we need to get you to the end of that journey and that healing journey. So I'm going to thank you for joining me today. Remember, my mission here is to support you in your healing journey through fibromyalgia and towards recovery. So before I go today, I want you to acknowledge the traumas and suffering that led your body into fibromyalgia condition. Acknowledge that this condition is now allowing you to heal deep, 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 deep traumas, and meditate on maybe the hidden losses within those traumas, but not too much. And until you join me again, when I'm going to talk about the second healing principle, that is correcting sleep patterns. Okay? Let yourself just have a bloody good cry. Until next time, tender loving care.